Hi, and welcome once again to Ivy English. I'm Karen.
And I'm Chris Gorski.
Today is April 26th, and today we're going to hear part 2 of the article entitled
Laziness and How to Overcome It.
And Chris and I were both kind of battling over one idea. Are we really lazy? Do we even know what laziness is? Because both of us are workaholics.
Yeah, I think that's really the conclusion we have to draw. I suppose if anybody listened to yesterday and you're a person that enjoys your idle time or is a little bit lazy, no judgment. There's no judgment for me about this. I think that I'm too far over the edge. I imagine we must be just unbearable people to listen to. Give me the work. So. I will get it done.
My students say they find it inspiring because they say that a teacher's enthusiasm will really rub off on the students. Yes. If they see the teacher working really hard, they often will work harder. If a teacher is being kind of passive and just getting by, you cannot expect hard work from the students.
Here. I completely agree. I think it's important for a teacher to have a passion, not just for your content, but also for the art of teaching itself.
Yes.
And
to care about the students.
And there are things that are frankly less exciting to talk about than others. But if your passion can mask the boringness of a given item, it will reflect in the student's ability to perform, I think. I agree with you.
Absolutely. Totally agree. All right. Well, let's continue with day 2 of our article. Now that we've outlined the differences between laziness, procrastination, and idleness, perhaps you realize there are times when you may be a little bit too lazy. If that's the case, here are some tips to beat those bouts of laziness.
Take baby steps. Oftentimes, we avoid work because some tasks can be overwhelming. One way to beat this tendency for inaction is to take baby steps. Instead of thinking of a 5-page paper as one big assignment, break it down into smaller components. Maybe you start by sitting down at your computer and writing a single paragraph. This small task can be easier to get done, and in the end, you'll find that it takes less time than to keep putting off the work.
Set constraints. Experts agree on one thing. You are more productive when you have a schedule with a set time frame. You are better off limiting the time you work to just a few hours a day than thinking that you have all day to get something done. This time limit helps people focus and get the job done.
Buddy up. You don't have to rely only on yourself to overcome laziness. Teaming up with friends can be a great way to get additional motivation. Friends can offer encouragement or even keep you accountable when you have a large task that you're struggling to tackle. These days, you don't need real friends, though. There are apps and digital assistants that can also help. They remind you what to do, and most importantly, they keep a record of every success.
And all of these are really great tips. We'll talk about them in more detail when we go back over our article.
One of the great movie moments of the past 10 years for me was in the Marvel Infinity War. And this was a colossal movie about maybe 5 years ago now. Thanos, the big bad guy, has all the stones. He has all the power that he needs in the world. And his bad guys aren't getting the job done. And so he puts on the Infinity Gauntlet and he says, I'll do it myself. And I just said, yeah, that's me. That's me right there.
That's one way to get it done.
I identified with the villain so clearly in that moment where he puts on all the power and he says, I will make this happen. Because in the end, I ultimately believe that while you have friends to be there for you, in the final moment, you need to be there for yourself, and there's no one else that can do it for you except you. So do it yourself.
That sounds like a cliche from cartoons. You want to get something done, you got to do it yourself.
It really does, but I'll tell you the truth. I really, truly believe it. I went through some experiences that were very challenging for my family, and I realized that I couldn't wait for someone to help me do it. If it was going to happen, it would be me. And maybe that's defined me. Maybe it's always a bad sign when you can really identify with the bad guy in the movie.
But I have to say that I had to take over some things at a young age, and I thought, I'm too young to be responsible for this. For example, cutting the grass.
Yeah.
And we didn't have a power mower. It was a hand mower.
Those hand mowers, right? Those push mowers.
I suppose was a little safer for a kid, but I thought, I'm just a little girl. I'm about 8 or 9 years old. why is this my responsibility? So that happens too.
Those are hard to use even as a teenager. Push mowers. Oh, those like the unmotorized ones, those are tough.
So sometimes a neighbor would feel bad for us and they'd come over with their power mower and cut the grass for us. So that's a memory from when I think I had too much responsibility too early. That can happen too. Let's go back to the beginning of our article. Now that we've outlined the differences between laziness, procrastination, and idleness, perhaps you realize there are times when you may be a little bit too lazy. All right, so sometimes maybe you can see yourself in some of this. You're feeling kind of lazy, you don't want to do anything. If that's the case, here are some tips to beat those bouts of laziness. Bouts is a good word. It's often used with illness. Oh, he had a bout of illness last week. That means it's a specific period of time. When it was done, it was done.
So another way to say a bout of something is a fit of something, F-I-T. Sometimes we'll say fits of something, F-I-T-S. It's actually related to the old English word for like the tree branch. Like I'm thinking of the song, I can't think of it, with a bough.
Oh,
Christmas song.
Bough, yeah.
So
when the bough breaks.
That's right. And the branch breaks. And bough actually means to bend. And so it's related to this word tree branch. And they bend, they can break. And there you go.
Okay, so a bout of something, that means it lasted a certain period. Now, all of these are great tips. Here's the first one.
Take baby steps.
Now, I talked about that in the previous broadcast. I said that one thing that can change your life is the notion of Kaizen, K-A-I-Z-E-N. That's a Japanese pronunciation of a Chinese compound, but the Japanese are the ones who created that compound from Chinese characters. Kaizen means to improve. And if you work on something a little bit every day, even if it's just a minute or two, set it for 10 minutes, and you do it every day, you will absolutely, positively improve. If you're waiting until 2 weeks from now when you're going to spend 8 hours on it, forget it. Just do a little bit now, do something else. Do a little bit more tomorrow. You will make progress. So that's what they mean by take baby steps. Just do a little bit at a time to improve whatever it is you're doing a little bit every single day.
Taking baby steps is an excellent phrase. You would do well to remember it.
Okay.
Let's look at our next sentence. Oftentimes, we avoid work because some tasks can be overwhelming.
And this is when we should take some of Chris's advice from yesterday. He says that when I'm doing something, my mind is always preparing me for the next step. That means his brain has decided what the next concrete thing is that I need to do. And that is breaking things down into steps. I will do this next, and then you get it done. Instead of thinking, oh, I've got this whole report to write. What am I going to do? That's not what he does. He thinks about, I have to sit down and I have to find some references for my report.
When something is overwhelming, it's too big to tackle, it's too big to do. We also have the word underwhelming, which is a terrible feeling when you have high expectations, but they aren't met. And so you feel kind of deflated, or you feel, this was not as good as I wanted it to be. That's underwhelming. However, we don't talk about whelming.
We
don't talk about that. Although in the past, that is a dead word. It's a dead word I wish we still had. It's very whelming.
Whelming. So, for example, if you're really, really looking forward to this party, you've been looking forward to it for 3 months. Finally, the day comes, you go there, and people are just kind of standing around, and they've formed little groups because they're too shy to kind of make new friends. And you just talk to one person you already knew. That was an underwhelming party.
Yeah, the hype train it's a double-edged sword. The hype train gets you real excited for something, and then the big day comes, and it's okay. It's underwhelming. But when you have the hype train, and the hype train pays off, it's such
great.
A good feeling.
It feels good. I'm going to give you a hint for what to do when you have a party like this. Introduce yourself to one new person. And I've made this kind of a policy. Whenever I go to an event, it could be boring if you just hang around and do what comes natural. I have decided to seek out one specific person and get to know them and have a deep conversation with them.
So there's a theory among certain people my age that you take an iconic line, especially something with a call and response. That means one person says something, the other person knows exactly what to say. Mm-hmm. Famously from The Simpsons, there was this line, dental plan, Lisa needs braces. And it was repeated over and over in this episode, and it became iconic. So the thought is that you do this call and response at a party. So you call out dental plan, and when you hear someone that says, Lisa needs braces, you know you have a connection with this person.
That's
hilarious. You go seek them out and you have this huge topic to talk about.
I think a lot of people do this with quotes from movies.
Yes. You say half the quote, the other person fills it in. You know you have a bond.
You have a connection, and then you can develop it from there.
That's so funny. Let's continue here. This wild tangent here. Our next sentence says, one way to beat this tendency for inaction is to take baby steps.
And we have already discussed in fair detail the importance of baby steps.
When we say tendency, this just means something you regularly do. Let's continue. Instead of thinking of a 5-page paper as one big assignment, break it down into smaller components.
That is one thing to do. For example, you have to do research first. You have to go online and find some information about the thing that you're going to write about. But another thing you have to be willing to do is to write crap. Now, sorry, that sounds kind of rude. It's not really a curse word. It's just not a polite word. But you have to be willing to write crap. So often we expect too much of ourselves. We think that as soon as we sit down and write it, everything's going to be in its final form and it's going to be great. But no, you have to write a bunch of really not great writing, a bunch of crap, before you are finally able to edit it down to what is really good.
So the word components just means things, but components are small things that make a bigger thing. Open your computer up and you see lots of little components. If you took out some of those components, took out those things, your computer won't work properly anymore. So a component is a smaller thing that helps a bigger system run.
That's right. Okay, next sentence.
Maybe you start by sitting down at your computer and writing a single paragraph.
Right, which kind of is a repetition of what I just said. You have to be willing to write crap because your first paragraph probably will not be very good because you're just warming up. And when I was young, my father gave me a lot of training in writing English composition. So when they taught it in school, I thought, who has to take a class like this? Didn't your father teach you this? And then that was the first time I found out that not everybody's father teaches you about English composition. And when I had finished a piece that I'd been procrastinating, but I finally got it written, my father says, throw out the first paragraph and the last paragraph. I said, why? He said, because usually they don't add anything to the piece, no new information. And he was right, and I usually follow his advice.
Do you still currently dump the first and last, or do you kind of do that old piece of advice where you write the first and final paragraph at the end?
I may do that after I'm editing, but the important thing is to do a mind dump. Just start writing. Even if you think it's really awful writing and you're not really getting to the point, just keep writing. And in that process, some good things will eventually come out. So I don't really have a policy about that, but I often will throw out things at the beginning. And often when you're trying to wrap something up, it's really trite, and I don't do that. And by the way, trite means that it's really kind of sentimental and it doesn't give you much information and you'd be better off not using that sentence.
All right, let's look at our next sentence. This small task can be easier to get done. And in the end, you'll find that it takes less time than to keep putting off the work.
I think for a lot of people, it's helpful. Instead of just being overwhelmed by the thought of, I have to write a whole paper, oh my gosh, just type out a paragraph that will get you started, because in many languages, like in German and Latin, they all have their version of the same proverb, and that is, all beginnings are difficult. Or in Latin, they say something like, just getting started is half the battle. And I have found that actually, if you just set up your work area, you've got the computer open to the right file, and you've got the things you need beside you, you think, oh, I might as well just start because it's all ready. But if you don't have things set up, it's much easier to procrastinate. So if you just do one little thing, you can often work up momentum and get going. Okay, let's go on to the next paragraph. Set constraints. That means that instead of thinking that you have all the time in the world, which you may think you have at the time, but which you never do, you give yourself a deadline, is basically what it's saying. Experts agree on one thing. You are more productive when you have a schedule with a set time frame. And I have read many, many, many books on productivity. And for many people, they cannot really get something done without a deadline. So if you've given yourself a time frame, I have to finish this by a certain day and time, and so forth, give yourself a deadline. And often when it's a real deadline, you're more likely to get something done.
I personally identify my window of opportunity to maximize efficiency. You know, the longer we talk about this, the more I think about it, that I reckon my proclivities for gaming has influenced the way I work.
Really?
Because as a gamer, which sounds like a waste of time, but if you really are competing at games at a high level, you're trying to be efficient with your movements, your button presses, your positioning. All of these skills come down to making the most out of the least. And maybe that's a reason why I enjoy video games more than movies. Movies, I'm very passive and watching. Games, I'm always thinking of my next step. Games, I'm always thinking, how could I do this a little faster, a little better than last time? How do I learn from my mistakes? And I think that carries over into my real life.
You can learn a lot of things from games. The only thing is don't overdo it so that it puts off the rest of your work.
Games are the reward.
Right. You are better off limiting the time you work to just a few hours a day than thinking that you have all day to get something done. And this is really true because in my own experience and from what I've read and from what I've learned from other people, our brains basically give us 4 good hours of work a day, just 4 hours of quality work time, energy. So if you want to get something done, number one, do it early in the day when your brain is freshest from having slept a good night's sleep, hopefully, or gotten a good night's sleep. And use the Pomodoro method so you don't burn yourself out. Get it done in the morning because by afternoon, you're going to be kind of drowsy. You're going to be tired. You want to take a nap. Your brain is not as fresh because your brain has used up a lot of its primetime energy.
And the Pomodoro method, I think, did you define it today or was that yesterday?
It was yesterday.
Was it yesterday? So Pomodoro method is you work for 25 minutes and take a break.
Take a 5-minute break, right? That's right. So realize that your time of quality brain energy is limited. So if you have something important you'd better fit it in that morning time. Okay, in our next sentence, this time limit helps people focus and get the job done. And that is really true. I have definitely found it's true in my own experience.
So for me, one thing I see people do every day is waste time in the MRT. I don't know how many people that I know they have something to do. And instead, they're just going to scroll. But maybe they set this time, their MRT commute to wherever they need to go. This is their personal time to decompress, to relax. No judgment from me. But I know there's people that could be getting things done. And for me, my MRT time is my office hours. They really are. I will get everything done. That is my commute time. I will use a short period of time for my personal answering messages. What's mom doing? What's my cousin doing? What's going on? But after that, it's into work, and my MRT is productive time, and it helps me get so much done. Almost all of my preparation for Ivy League is done in the MRT.
That's amazing. Okay, I will often be reading a book, a physical book, or an ebook on my phone, or listening to a podcast, or listening to the book and reading it at the same time.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
How have I never thought to do that? That's so because never once crossed my mind to do that.
Because you can get your phone to read the book to you automatically in really excellent English. Or sometimes I just start people watching because I collect ideas for things that I want to write about. So there are a lot of things you can do in the MRT. If people look like they're not doing anything, they may be doing something that you're not aware of.
That's true.
Okay, we're on the last paragraph now.
Buddy up. You don't have to rely only on yourself to overcome laziness. And this is so true.
It really is true. We were talking earlier about how the people around you really affect your attitude towards work. So if I find that somebody else is kind of putting things off and just kind of goofing around, I will often feel less urgent about my own work, like cleaning the house. If you just order kids to clean the house, but you're not doing it yourself, good luck.
Yes. Same thing with learning. If you are demanding your child to study for hours a day and you're going to watch some TV, your kids will not be productive.
Children do what you do, not what you say. So, in addition, if you have a friend who will kind of remind you and they're hardworking, my students have all told me this really helps motivate them. So this is a seriously good hint.
Sometimes you need to find better friends, too.
That's true.
This was true of me in college. I had to find better friends.
That is not saying like these people have no value. It just means in my life right now,
that's right,
I need to have a different kind of person.
I need to be with these kinds of people that are focused on their grades. And that is not to discredit my friends that were less focused. They're great for different reasons. But right now, I need to be with these friends because they have the same goal mindset that I do.
So when people talk about really toxic conversations on social media and stuff, I go, what kind of friends do you have? Because my friends are almost all inspiring. I mean, truly, they're not lazy, negative people. They're good people. Okay.
Teaming up with friends can be a great way to get additional motivation.
We often call this an accountability partner.
Yeah.
Somebody says, well, did you get this done today? And do you need help or blah, blah, blah? An accountability partner.
In grad school, I had a friend during the theoretical parts of our stuff. Like it just wasn't the crucial stuff in grad school. And his name is Ben. And God, I love this man. We would trade weeks. He was really motivated too. We would trade weeks into doing homework. So this week I would do all the work, give him notes, like executive summaries. And then the next week he would do it, hand me his notes and pages, notations. And so it was 1 week of really hard work and then a total week of like relaxing time. It was so good. It worked so well. Oh, I miss him dearly.
And you both learned a lot in the process.
Oh, yeah. And also learned about efficiency. Let's continue here. Friends can offer encouragement or even keep you accountable when you have a large task that you are struggling to tackle.
Like I said, you call these an accountability partner, and you can find these online if you don't happen to know one in real life.
These days, you don't need real friends, though.
Yeah.
There are apps and digital assistants that can also help.
There are habit trackers, so there are all kinds of apps that can help you keep up your habit, and they give you a little positive reinforcement when you do it, when you finish all your habits for the day.
They remind you what to do, and most importantly, they keep a record of every success.
I actually do this in a different way. I keep a bullet journal. At the end of the day, I type up everything that happened that day. So, yeah, I've been doing this for over 20 years. I have a lot of records, but they are very useful because I forget things. Did I really do that? And I read about it. Oh, that's interesting. All right, we have a few questions for you. Number 1, according to the day 1 passage, which of the following people is procrastinating? The answer is
D. Ed is planning his art project that is due next month instead of studying for the math exam tomorrow.
Oh, boy. That doesn't sound like it will have a good outcome. Question 2, please complete the form with the information contained in the day 1 passage. And we're just going to complete it for you. The first item is laziness, and our definition is one has to do something but doesn't want to spend too much blah, energy. Yeah, okay.
Procrastination, one blank, an urgent task, and does other work.
And
the answer is postpones or puts off.
And finally, idleness. One has finished their tasks and can do nothing.
Be careful. Don't say anything here. That's wrong.
In this sentence. All right, question number 3.
Eric doesn't feel like doing anything when he realizes that there are a lot of things to do in a day. Which of the 3 measures mentioned in the day 2 passage should he take so that he can focus on one thing at a time?
And the answer is set constraints. Give yourself a deadline. And that's it for today. Wishing you a very productive day and week and hope to see you next time. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.